He went from the wall, and then in Thor Ragnarok, he has a very tiny role in that. And now here he is in a movie where he's downsizing himself. But I'm just trying to figure out, is Matt Damon downsizing his career?
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Real Impact. I'm Tom Bilyeu, and in this show, we are going to take you through how I took myself from scrounging in my couch cushions to find enough change, but gas in my car, to building a billion-dollar brand. One of the places that I got so much of my information around mindset was in movies. So the three of us are going to be breaking down films every week to show you the kind of cool stuff that you can drag out of that and apply in your real life. On my left, I have none other than Dr. Finesse. And on my right, I have Casey Files Elliott, people that are both very good at business and total cinephiles like myself. So without further ado, let's dive into today's film, which is Downsizing. Spoiler alert. This one is going to be fascinating to talk about. I cannot wait to hear your guys' take on this film. And this film, for those of you that haven't seen it, is about, it follows Matt Damon, who decides, for reasons of increasing his wealth and being good to the environment, decides to shrink himself down to an absolute fraction of the size, which is a social movement that's happening. He does that consciously, and it's known as getting small. And we're going to be talking more about getting small later, and then the adventures that he has once he gets small. So without further ado, let's dive into our initial thoughts. So Dr. Finesse, take it away.
Oh man, I'm going to try to keep this short because it's crazy. I don't know exactly what I thought of this film. It's hard to really go in and say, oh, I loved it, I hated it.
I'm going to say it's not hard.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you know what it is?
I'm going to make it real easy when we get to my turn.
Well, I'll just say this. I'm trying to figure out, is Matt Damon downsizing his career? That's what I want to know. Like, is he downsizing his career? Because he went from the wall, which was random to me. Even when I saw the trailer, I was like, wait a minute. This is like ancient China with the friggin' wall, and you have like an Anglo-Saxon hanging out with these Chinese guys like on the wall. And I'm like thinking, the ancient Chinese scrolls didn't show this. I didn't see an Anglo-Saxon hanging out in ancient China. So that tripped me out. So, and I remember thinking, wow, that's a bold decision. This seems like an action movie that
is he playing? I didn't see it. Is he playing an Asian guy?
No.
I'm gonna say that.
Yeah,
surely.
that would have been
and no one saw it, Tom.
No one saw it. Yeah. Because he got some backlash. Everyone was like, why couldn't you just cast an Asian hero? Why'd you got to cast the Westerner? You know what I mean? Which makes perfect sense. But I remember thinking, that's a weird choice for him. And then Interstellar, though I did like this choice, he had such a tiny role in Interstellar, like a surprising role, but a small role. And then in Thor Ragnarok, he has a very tiny role in that, but it's a great cameo. And now here he is in a movie where he's downsizing himself. But I'm just trying to figure out, I'll say, I didn't like this movie. So it leads me back to my point. Is he downsizing his career on purpose? Or is he pulling a James Franco where he's like, I'm going to do what I want. Or I'm just going to star in a soap opera here. I'm going to star in an off-Broadway play here. And I'm going to star in an NYC class here. Now, I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, I didn't get what made him think that this movie would work for him and how it would progress his career. I guess he's at a point where he doesn't care. But yeah, this movie was strange. I'm going to have to chew on it. I'm hoping in this discussion that we'll figure out something and I'll learn to like it. But man, right away, I was like, what the hell? Like, it started out to me so clean and fresh. It felt like a cool Twilight Zone episode. Because there are so many Twilight Zone episodes like this where someone shrinks or gets big or whatever, and they got to manage their life based on the new parameters. And I thought it was going there, but it just went somewhere, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's my initial thought.
All right. Files?
Well, that leads me to give a little behind-the-scenes information about the movie, speaking of Matt Damon. So he was not who Alexander Payne, the director and writer, originally had in mind for the role. And in fact, this movie was actually what Alexander Payne wanted to make right after Sideways. So it was conceived in 2006.
Really?
Long ago. And then I think because it was going to involve a lot of visual effects, it was a much bigger movie than Payne had ever done. He just had a lot of trouble getting it made. And he wanted the role to be played by Paul Giamatti. So eventually, after he made a few other films and he finally got this greenlit, part of that deal was, it's not going to be Paul Giamatti. This movie's expensive. We need a bankable star. And that's how they came to Matt Damon.
Wow.
I read that he felt like of all the big name, box office stars, Matt Damon's the most everyman type, which I can see. I can see if you're being forced to cast someone who's more of a leading man. Matt Damon seems like a good choice, but why Matt Damon made the choice, I don't know. Probably just to have the opportunity to work with Payne, but interesting little backstory.
Wow.
As far as my thoughts, I actually don't. I saved this for this discussion. I didn't want to tell you guys beforehand, but I didn't hate it as much as I think both of you did.
Wow.
I didn't love it, but I thought it was ambitious, so I like that it was trying for some interesting things. I also love Alexander Payne, so maybe I'm giving him a little leeway. I love Election. I love The Descendants, About Schmidt. So many great films, so I'm just sort of primed to give him leeway, perhaps. But so those are my initial thoughts.
So I also like Alexander Payne. The movies that you just listed are great. I like Matt Damon. I think that Matt Damon has really taken some audacious movies. And in fact, in the beginning of this, when I still had hope for the movie, I was like, I get why Damon chose this role, because there's going to be some real acting he's going to have to do. This is going to be like a big journey he's going to have to go on. And I remember, I think it was with one of the Bourne films, the German girl. Anybody remember her name from Run Lola Run?
Yeah, Asia Argento, is that her? Or no, that's not the other. That's the other
I don't
one.
remember her
mix up the
name, but
all the times.
I remember her saying in an interview, like, even during like our lunch breaks, he wants to like rehearse scenes and run lines, and she's like, "Can we sometimes just like relax?" And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I actually love when actors take their craft seriously, so I was actually really excited to see him play this. But the movie, just from like the writing and execution standpoint, is all over the map. Like tonally, this thing is an absolute nightmare. I don't know what happened. Very capable writer director. So look, I don't think anybody bats 1,000. So when I say I totally forgive, but like my experience of watching the movie was like, what is happening? Because this is exactly how it had to go, right? You do it like a Twilight Zone episode where you get small, and now it's the ramifications of being small. But that's not what happened. He got small, and then it became a political film about like what it means to be like giving back to society, or to be conscious of our role in that, and our conscious role in wealth and inequality and all this stuff. And I just thought it was so like a hard right turn, like that. There was no indication in the promotional material leading up, and there was no, and I can forgive that, right? So if the director's like, oh, they fucked me with the marketing, great, totally, I get it. That's not what happened here, because look at the casting leading up to that hard right turn. When they start going political and it starts being this environmental wealth inequality treatise, they had cast comedic actors. They had played it for comedy. You've got Kristen Wiig, for the love of God, who's like one of the funniest people ever. Like even when she's being serious, she's funny. Yeah. So it's like she's just funny no matter what. And then you got Jason Sudeikis.
Mm-hmm.
So he's funny in everything that he does. And in like even in this, where he's actually not objectively funny, but you still feel this wink.
Just his voice. Hey!
Yeah, the way he performs. So every cue that they're giving me as a film audience is this is going to be funny. So because I'm primed for it to be funny, and then it actually is kind of funny in the beginning, then when the woman that comes in that has the Vietnamese accent and it's really strong, she seems to be playing it for comedy, but then I realize it's not actually funny. So then I'm like, wait, am I laughing at the wrong thing? And it was like about the time they entered up to that point, I thought it was just kind of struggling to be funny. And then I realized they're actually not trying to be funny. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to take this seriously. And then it was like, it's fucking ham-handed. It's on the nose. It was for me, it was really, really just a catastrophe. And it was audacious. Like, I don't want to be flippant, especially knowing we're going to be making content. Like, I get that there's going to be 1,000 review shows like this aimed at us and how we're being ham-handed, we fuck something up. So, like, with all the sympathy in the world for how hard it is to create, I say it was a catastrophe.
You know, it's funny because to a couple of your points, I should have known when I was watching the film that Kristen Wiig wasn't going to play an integral part. Because when you watch the trailer, it seems like she's in the movie.
Yes.
But like her first few scenes, like she's barely speaking. she's an aside. I remember there was a particular scene where someone asked them a question, and she was like, literally did that. And then he answered, and I was like, what? She's not going to answer? She's not even have a line here? This is weird. And then he just starts talking. And I remember thinking, ooh, something's afoot. She's going to disappear from this movie. And clearly she disappeared. And to your point about Matt Damon's acting, and it goes back to the whole point of I'm wondering what he's doing with his career. Is this a conscious decision? Is he experimenting? Is he at a point where he's like, hey, I'm Matt Damon. I can do what I want. He still is a good actor. And I think there's one scene in particular where he goes to his neighbor's place. After he's been downsized, he has these European neighbors who are throwing a rave. And there are a bunch of people there, and they're having a party. And he's like, can you keep it down just a little bit? They're like, no, party. And then this woman approaches him with the pill and goes, here, take a pill. And he's like, well, what is that?
I have allergies.
Yeah, exactly. He's like,
that was amazing.
This, that. I don't know what I'm taking. I don't want to take it. And I'm telling you, that got me through college. I was completely drug-free through college for reasons like that. I never knew what anyone was giving me. And people are always cryptic about what they were passing on. It's like, take this. Even if they put it in their mouth like that woman did to share a kiss, I was like, man, I wanted a free kiss in college, but I wasn't going to take it at the expense of someone slipping me whatever the hell she gave him. But that scene cracked me up, and he played it so well. And there were his reactions, he does it really well. And there was a lot of that in this film, but it wasn't enough, like you said, to save this mess of a film.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned the tone having this big change. And I read something in an interview with Payne this morning where he said, this isn't so much a movie with one story. It's like 10 different stories in one movie. And that's actually how he conceived it. So it's interesting.
Oh, God.
You are, yeah.
Wow.
That may or may not be a success, but he got what he was going for, I guess.
Okay, so I'm going to drop a thing that I used to teach my students on you guys. Some of you think boring is not a genre. So if you want to convey to someone that a character is bored, don't make a boring film, right? Don't actually bore your audience. So if you're trying to show like transitions and how like one decision then turns into this and then a chance encounter turns into that, don't actually make it 10 stories. Like you have to make it one fluid thing that allows me to feel his transition. Because I'm taking in your film, I'm experiencing it, it's jarring. Like you can't make a film and not realize I've seen thousands of films coming up to this point. So the language of cinema, I speak. And so now if you break the language of cinema, you start talking to me in gibberish, or like the chick with the drug being super cryptic, asking me to go on some crazy ride. I'm just like, what is going on? And like the biggest red herring in this fucking thing, the movie is called Downsizing. It has a very cool high concept premise about people who get shrunk. And then not a single thing after that is relevant to them being small.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you want to tell an environmental story, I'm all about it. Tell an environmental story. People don't have to be small for that. If you want to tell a story about wealth and equality, tell a story about wealth and equality. You don't need, like, to be small for that. Like, it would be way more interesting. In fact, right now, we got to hold ourselves to the standard. In a show like this, we're going to throw something out like that. Let's just fucking riff and see if we can come up with something conceptually that would be more interesting. Okay. So, if you're going to tell a story about wealth and equality, and you want to do it through the very cool high concept version of shrinking somebody down, then have somebody who's broke, struggling to get by, not middle class to very briefly in a big house and then immediately back to middle class, right? So we don't even get to see him enjoy what it's like to be rich. So take somebody who's struggling, right? They sell everything, they downsize, and now all of a sudden they realize that once they sell their house and pay off all their debt, they've got 12 million bucks. And now they get to go somewhere where they don't have to work. They're super wealthy. And now what do they learn about themselves? The good, the bad, the ugly? Like, what is it? Maybe this person has their entire life fantasized about not having to work. I just want to be rich so I don't have to work. I want to be rich so I can feel good, right? They think of themselves as less. They think of rich people as more. And so they go and they have this revelation. I want purpose and meaning in my life. So he thinks, oh, like you set him up in the beginning. He's having to help all these people with their aches and pains. And like he doesn't realize how fulfilled he is until it's gone. And then he doesn't have to work anymore. He can be totally like just lounging around in his big mansion with a pool, which of course at first is a lot of fun. And then realize I have no purpose, I have no meaning. And then all of a sudden is throwing himself back into work, even though he doesn't need to help people. Okay, we've gone on a journey, right? Like,
that's a plot.
I get it. But when it's like, this is about downsizing and the conflict between he and his wife, where the wife wants the big house, but he's stressed out about money. You've set me up. That's what the movie's about. And then poof, that's gone.
It's gone.
And it becomes an environmental thing. But the irony is you have a character who literally says, this isn't about the environment. This is about, you don't save the environment, you save yourself. Oh, okay, cool. Got it. This is going to be about him saving himself, right? Wife leaves him, crisis, and now we're going to go on this journey with him as he's dealing with that crisis of finding himself. Who am I now, right? Without my wife, without needing to go to this meaningless job. I've got the big house, you know, like, yay, like, tell me that story. But then they fucking don't. They, I guess, go into like the third film already. And they like transition. And then the Vietnamese woman shows up and we've got another movie where, oh God, like, so to me, it's like, everything starts with that thematic, right? Like, what is your theme? It's like when I tell entrepreneurs, everything starts with the goal. Until you have the goal and it's crystal clear in your mind, then you can work backwards to like what in entrepreneurial world is the path to execution. In this, like if you have a thesis or something that you want to convey, then you work backwards. What are the characters, the plot points, the emotional beats that they're going to have to hit in order to actually make me, the viewer, experience that, have the revelation and be like, whoa, I'm changed now for having seen this movie.
You just gave filmmaking the Ray Dalio principle, speaking of.
Well, and I think it's interesting because they flirted with, I thought they were going to explore that world of being small much more. They flirt with that when you first meet Nok Lan. Hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. You see there's this whole other world in Leisure Land, which is the town where the small people live, that's not just rich people in giant houses. Like, people are being forced to become small. Like, the world has taken advantage of this technology and now it's not only for good. And so it felt like, okay, now there's class differences in Leisure Land. Maybe we'll explore that. But they don't. Then they move on to another part of the film that's a totally different theme. That was a nice surprise
when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, here they are saying that everyone has a chance to live big and rich because you can do what you want. There's the space. We're minimizing you. So when we minimize you, we can make your life luxurious. You can have a big house. You can have this. And then he realizes, oh no, classism still exists down here. And there are people living in poverty and squalor. But then they just jump away from it. It's like, whoa, what did they just do?
Strange decision. And so you were saying about don't make a boring movie, even if your character is meant to be bored. That's something that he is so great at. He deals with characters.
He being Alexander Payne.
Yes, sorry, Alexander Payne. A lot of his films, the main character is dealing with their mundane life. That's a big plot point, and he's been able to overcome that hurdle.
Yeah.
But I agree, here it was a much tougher case. He didn't make the case the way he has in other films.
I'm with you. All right, let's dive into segment 2. What would you do? All right, you got a good one for us on this.
It's pretty obvious, but it feels like the question we should answer, which is, would you get small?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I mean, on paper, no. It's the thought of it. I mean, even if they told me, wow, this world is being overpopulated and we've got to do something and we're moving in this direction and you're going to be the first to move in this direction and take advantage of the real estate, because eventually all of this beautiful real estate is going to be gone and you're not going to be able to have a big house, and we're not going to be as overcrowded as the current world, but it's still going to be tough to get what you want. So let's be the first. That sounds attractive, especially when you have a friend vouching for the experience, which was the Jason Sudeikis character. But the thought of being shrunken down, I know it's all relative, and once you're in the world, you don't see it, but I like to travel. And the world isn't yet equipped for the tiny microcosmic worlds for me to travel enough. Of course, they go to Norway anyway on a plane, and they have like little seats up next to the windows. But to me, it's just so hard. I don't think I'd be ready to make that leap. I don't think I'd be ready to be the first. Of course, there are people who think like innovators, and there are people who want to jump forward. There are people who are shapers, and there are people. I'll try to get into all the Ray Dalio stuff, but I don't think I'm that person. I can safely say that even if I knew that it was safe and I could safely be shrunken down, I would think of all the terrible things that can go wrong once I'm shrunken down, like some. And this is the dark side of me thinking of some terrorist getting to this microcosmic world and just trashing it by himself, going Gulliver's Travels on everybody. I can't handle that, and I can't risk it. So I would say easily no. I would wait and see, and I'd be a follower in this case.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to look at it from like why you were doing it, and so let's take Paul. He gets small for all the wrong reasons. If there is a right reason, but he definitely doesn't do it for any good reason. He does it because his ego is bruised. He doesn't have enough money to buy his wife a new house. To me, I thought he did it for his wife. He wasn't even that. He thought, this is the way I'm finally going to be happy. I'm going to please my wife who's been disappointed for years, theoretically. We're going to have this beautiful life that we could never have in the real world. He's running away from all his problems by getting small. So the decision he makes is not a good decision to do it. Now, if I think about me, would I want to do it to be like this, like you said, an innovator who is perhaps moving the world forward in a positive way? I mean, I think that the verdict is still out on whether this would actually be a good way to address the issue of climate change. But it's very scary. I think ultimately I wouldn't, because it's just such a dramatic physical change. And you'd have to do a lot of convincing to get me to think that that was the right direction to go in.
Well, let's see if I can make this the most definitive answer for you guys ever. Definitively not. I want you to imagine for a second if I said, hey, guys, I'm going to put you in a world. And by the way, there's only like 10,000 people total in this world. But it's populated entirely by giants. Giant bugs, giant animal, like giant, like the size of a skyscraper giant. That is the world's most dangerous world. Like, I was just thinking, imagine somebody was like,
that's amazing.
Fuck this leisure town. Like, I'm pissed. You know, my wife or husband, whatever, got small and went there. I'm just going to go step on it. Like, it would be the easiest thing to obliterate hundreds, thousands of people at one time. You just go in there and trample it, or just let a horse loose, let a cow, right? Like, imagine how behemoth these things would be. And so even when it rained, and I was like, okay, like the net can handle a bit of drizzle, but how does the net do with like a hurricane or gale force winds or like, it's done, kids, it is done. These guys are so small, it's just pure madness.
And that brings up, I like this practical viewpoint. Question, they literally sail to Norway. Is that right?
No. What they do, and this is so asinine. But then
they like sort of.
He says, "I FedEx my boat," so the boat was FedExed. But I thought, do you know how well you'd have to pack that? Like one bit of damage, like it's getting thrown around, and like your boat is going to be thrashed when it gets there. So let's start with that. And then second, if someone dropped a pebble in the lake, it would ripple out and destroy that boat. So like you've got to just be praying the whole time that like nothing causes even the most mild disturbance. Have you ever been even on a lake, dude? If the wind picks up, it's like the water's like thrashing. They all die instantly. I was like, this is pure insanity. I love the notion of it, and it's a fun exercise. But as a filmmaker, you've got to address those concerns. So, for instance, if they said we've built subterranean homes. Okay, right? Which is the punchline at the end of the film for the environment that they've had to create all this. But like, that's actually the kind of thing you would have to do. There would have to be 0 natural predators, 0. Normal-sized humans could not get to you because but one of them gets a mild mental illness. You're done.
That dude in the bar from the beginning of the film.
That guy,
why hasn't he just stomped on all?
Exactly. He wasn't happy with it. But even, I mean, to your guys' point, when they get to Norway and they get to the original colony and you see that it's right next to the lake, A splash would destroy that town.
Done.
A splash of the
And
lake.
they act like, oh, the birds don't like the taste of us.
Yeah,
We're good.
that was the only concern. Oh, eliminated. But no, who in their right mind would build houses the size of a mini rock next to a lake? Have you seen what wind and water does to just even the sand? It washes it away. Like, it just made no sense. That made zero sense to me. I'm like, they're going to die. They're going to die. But that's funny. Like, you're basically being in the world populated by giants.
Yeah, and I could go on and on and on about like all the things where I was like, this just doesn't make sense. The way that they're dealing with it. It's a fun concept, and it'd be fun to really see it done right. But the one that really got me was, and he doesn't even address it, you go from being in a world with 7.2 billion people that you can choose from romantically to now what they say at the end of everything, 3% of the world had gone small.
That's right.
Like, you've so reduced your odds. Like, he should be lamenting that, if nothing else. Like, now how do you find somebody? Because people are going to come in together. So first of all, it's only 3% of the world. Second, most of them did it with somebody. At least that's how it's portrayed in the film. And so now it's like, dude, like, where do you go from that? Like, there's a whole season of what was the thing that you mentioned? Twilight Zone episodes could have been done from like all the weird knock-on effects, the things that you're not thinking about or expecting. Like that, they really, really could have done that. But the 10 different films into one, just it did not play for me. All right, so anyway, but that was all about would you get small? I would not. Put your guys' answers in the comments. We want to know. In fact, I want to hear from somebody that would. And I want to know if there are any answers other than for the environment, which is certainly intriguing if you got a higher adoption rate, or for the wealth thing, which also may really get some people jazzed. And I actually understood that. That was one of the cooler things. But they don't explore it in the film. It was so crazy.
And to interject, that was another thing I learned about the genesis of the idea. So Alexander Payne has a writing partner that I think almost all of his films he's co-written with. Jim Taylor is his name. And Taylor is the one who came up with this very original idea where he was like talking to his brother, and they made a parlor game of calculating how far your money would go if you got small. And that was what the whole script came from. And yeah, it's interesting because that seemed like was going to be the main plot of the whole film from the trailer, and was an interesting thing to consider. And then they just moved away from it. But
they move away from it after spending so much time setting it up.
Yeah.
With like us figuring out their debt and like, I really thought that's where we were going.
Neil Patrick Harris scene where it's like, look at the giant house you could have.
That's right.
And, that would have been cool to really see them explore that and to see like, because here's the thing, getting rich is a fascinating phenomenon. And it's in some ways better than you're expecting. And then in other ways like, oh, this changed nothing about how I feel about myself, for instance, right? So getting rich will not change how you feel about yourself. So watching them explore that. But then getting rich does get you access to, you can create more. So if you've got a vision of something you want to create, suddenly you can do that. So the fact that they didn't explore any of that.
You know, and I thought real quick, and I thought about one of our past guests on Impact Theory, John Paul DeJoria, has that line that he always says, what's the point of wealth if it's not shared? And again, I thought they were exploring those themes for a moment when you realize how lonely Matt Damon was. Like, he didn't have Kristen Wiig, he didn't have his wife to join him, and he was suddenly this lonely guy who had raving neighbors. He made a move on that woman who, you know, didn't work out.
Call out to Reno 911,
yes,
by the way.
Yes.
I don't have the actress's name in my head, but I love
Literally,
her
I was like,
from that show.
Yeah.
That was what, the single
single mom.
Yeah,
She's from Reno 911. So and you realize like he has this newfound wealth, so to speak, and this new lifestyle, but he has no one to share it with at first, and it's really lonely for him. And they set it up to go in that direction, but it just went wayward.
All right, now it's time for Cold Stone Themery. Take us deep.
All right, so I have a quote from Mr. Payne about what he felt Paul, Matt Damon's character, learns in the film. So he said, "To realize, as we all should, that it all can end, and we must accept that, just as we must accept that we will die. Only when we accept those things are we empowered to combat them, if not defeat them." So my question is, do we have to accept our own mortality in order to truly become empowered?
Man. I don't know if you have to accept it to become empowered. I think you just have to accept it because it's inevitable, unless you think you're going to live forever like Steve Aoki and Tom Bilyeu. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess I look at it differently, and I think of my own personal life. Things changed for me drastically. Anyone who knew me before 2008 knows that I'm a completely amended version of myself post 2008. And because the summer of 2008, I mentioned this before, my mom passed away, and I for the first time truly I got in touch with the idea of mortality, and that tends to happen. It's a thing that happens to adults who lose parents. It's a different type of grief system. Everyone grieves differently individually, but there is a grief class of people, whether you're a kid who loses a parent or you're an adult. They say an adult who loses a kid is the worst type of grief. And I didn't understand that until now. I can't even imagine, because it's unnatural, so to speak, the unnatural order. But adults who lose parents, that's when the psychology of an adult, that is when you really, truly realize your mortality and you start to shift gears. There tends to be a drastic shift. Sometimes people get depressed. A lot of times people get depressed, but whether or not they come out of the fog, there is a shift in mentality of how they view the world, their goals, and the way they view their life. And I think whether or not you embrace it, which I think most people do, I'll speak for myself, you do start to understand, I'm here for whatever reason that I create, and I've got to do something with it. And whether I choose to live a false life and just live it day by day, or whether I choose to plan, whatever, people have their own things. But for me personally, I would say that it was eye-opening. Everything that I wanted to do, but I was holding off on, it got fast-tracked. Not because like, oh, I'm going to die, but it's more like, wow, what's the meaning of life and what's the meaning of my life? Why am I waiting? Why am I waiting to try this in my career? Why am I waiting to push forward and try something new? Why am I waiting to get out of being stagnant and doing what I've been doing forever and shift gears? Why am I waiting? For me, I've always wanted to have a family and a kid. Why am I waiting? I was that guy who was like, oh, and I need to be very, very established and got to have this in order and I got to be rich before I have a kid. What? Why was I waiting? I wanted to have a kid. So that changed gears. So I think realizing your mortality is essential to move forward and for progress in general. Like, you can't progress unless you truly realize your mortality. So.
Wow, very interesting.
I wish, just hearing that, I'm like, I wish that Paul was based on your life story instead of his own.
It's interesting.
Because I think it's a really interesting theme for the film to explore. But for me, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Paul, at the beginning, it was
the 10th film.
Yeah,
in the logical
you're right.
sequence.
It so was. Because there wasn't that foreboding sense of the world is ending until
it
the end.
literally is a surprise to the characters and a surprise to us.
10th film, 30th act.
Yeah.
And, in the beginning, it seems like Paul's trajectory is he doesn't know who he is, but he wants to be important or be viewed as important. So, like, the whole movie, he's searching for, like, who am I? Why am I here? Which sort of relates to this theme of confronting your mortality and then doing something with your life. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what he finally realizes at the end of the film when we learn that the world is going to end in about 100 years, that, like, I need to do something with my life now. And that's what's important. But I just wish... I don't know. I wish there had been more of a through line to that decision, because I do think it's an interesting theme to explore. And I agree with you that it's a powerful concept, and that anything that's keeping you from doing what you really want to be doing is silly, because we have limited time on this earth and you just need to start doing it. So it's a great theme to explore. I wish they had done a better job of it, but and I wish it had been the Christopher McDonald story instead of the Paul, whatever his last name was that they kept mispronouncing
that's right.
story.
So this is a question that I grapple with deeply in my life. It is one of the central questions of my life. And it's funny that you put me in the category of people who think they're going to live forever, which I actually don't. I put myself in the category of people who want to see science get to the point where we can live forever, and that I'm optimistic that that will happen within our lifetime. And so I think I've got a shot at it, but I really do live in the friction between knowing that the way science is going, there will be a generation that actually does live forever, whether they upload their consciousness or whether we just get so good at synthetic biology that we print organs and can replace them. And I don't think many people argue that there will eventually come a period where we cross over, and now for every year that you live, technology gets better by more than a year of elongating your life. So it's not like you're born and know, oh, I'm going to live forever. It's like just someone, probably someone alive now, will make it to, you know, maybe it takes them to 80 or 90 before science hits that tipping point. But I think that it will happen now or in 1,000 years, but it's going to happen. And it could be that uploading consciousness, whatever it ends up being. But that, with the friction of, I know that I could have an aneurysm and die before we finish this episode, right? Like, both are very, very real to me now, but neither of those influence my empowerment. So my empowerment comes from, and I think about this when I think about people who worry about their legacy, right? So I was just recording Alexa content about this, and I said, look, I beseech you all not to think about legacy. Stop thinking about legacy right now. The only reason that you would ever end up on your deathbed, which is how people always phrase this, like, oh, I'm worried that when I get on my deathbed, I'll wish I had XYZ. It's like, what the fuck are you doing waiting for your deathbed? Like, the deathbed moment, or not even waiting for your deathbed moment, but that you care what you will think on your deathbed, right? That's like me saying, oh, I want to live my life in a way now that when I'm really hungry or when I'm fasting, that I've optimized to be proud of my life when I'm fasting. Yeah. It's like, what? Like, it's such a temporary state. Like, first of all, I hope that my deathbed is very short. I don't want to be dying for years and years and years where this becomes a meaningful thing. And second of all, the only way that I could see being on my deathbed and saying I didn't optimize my life, and I wrote these down, I don't have them memorized, but like, there's just a few things about your life that are going to optimize it for today, and I promise will make you good for your deathbed. So making the most of your time here. So doing the things that matter to you, right? Doing the things that matter to you will be rad right now today. You don't need to be dying to be like, oh, thank God I did those things. Those are pleasurable right now in the moment, right? Meaning and purpose. Meaning and purpose are, it is universal to humans. And people that don't have meaning or purpose in their life, I promise, like, those people are unhappy today. So it is only the, oh shit, time is running out, that wakes them from the stupor of existing, allowing themselves to exist in that. But you don't need to be dying to, or even think that you're ever going to die for it to suck to be in a bad mood today, right? Like, if you told me, Tom, guaranteed you live forever, fantastic. I still don't want to waste even a second being in a shitty mood because it doesn't feel good experientially, right? So we're all stuck in this eternal now. The now is the only thing that's real. So whatever you're experiencing now, you might as well think of that as eternal. So I don't want to be unhappy. I want to do things that serve other people because I'm a human and we're wired for connection and community. So that's always going to feel awesome. And so building a set of skills that help other people, that's just rad. Having deep connection with people, again, same thing, like loving, same thing. And I wrote, I don't know, there was like 7 things or something, all along the kind of lines of what I've just been outlaying. And I was like, nothing about thinking I'm going to die makes me want to do those things more than just like the pleasure of the moment. So I don't believe in legacy because when I'm dead in my belief system, I will have no awareness of it whatsoever. People could love me. People could hate me. I mean, think about people that right when they died, their legacy was amazing. And then 5 years later, something comes out and their legacy crumbles to shit and they're not there to uphold it. Or 100 years later. Or, I mean, now we're debating like whether Shakespeare was really Shakespeare or some other guy, right? So it's like, oh man, like you want to talk about the most tenuous thing ever is fucking legacy. And then you're just a name and an entry in a book. Like nobody really knows who you are. So like none of that is inspiring to me. But living in this moment, what can I do right now? How can I optimize my neurochemical happiness? Like that's meaningful.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were to find out, if science proved that they got word back from someone after they died and said like, man, I look back and I heard some people talking some shit about me and I realized I didn't leave a legacy. Would that change the way you felt about legacy?
No, because I don't operate by that now. So right now, I think of, I have a mission. My mission is to pull people out of the matrix. Okay, so I'm going to do what it takes to do that, regardless of what other people think, right? So I have no interest, like for instance, this is really interesting, and it's actually something that I think about. People have a weird thing about me swearing. But the reality is that I swear off camera probably more than I swear on camera. If anything, I'm toning it down when I'm on camera because of how that makes me feel emotionally. It is a thing that since my childhood has allowed me to capture an emotion and express it. And they've done studies on this. By expressing an emotion, your brain like really latches onto that and really feels it. So when I can't swear, I feel you've taken the most emotionally potent words, and I'm very verbal. So this is not only how I express something, it's how I experience something. So now you're taking away my ability to experience something because it makes you uncomfortable. And quite frankly, I don't give a shit what people think, right? I care about my experience, and I care about the end result of actually pulling people out of the matrix. And I don't see how swearing stops me from doing that, because anybody that's hung up on a swear word, they're not ready to be pulled out of the matrix yet. So, and since I've never explained, I don't think in this framework, anybody that's seen me on /TomBilliou on YouTube knows exactly what I'm talking about right now, but here they probably don't. For me, the matrix is just a metaphor for a limiting belief system, which I think most people have. And I certainly had for 25, 26 years of my life. And so going on that journey of developing a growth mindset and all of that changed everything about my life, which is why I'm so passionate about doing the same for other people. And really that brings us to our whole thesis around this show and Impact Theory Studios, which is that through storytelling, through narrative, we can find these hooks that allow us to talk about things like this, that allow us to go through and debate things like, do you need to face your own mortality in order to become empowered or not? So that's the whole thesis. That's why that stuff matters to me. And it has nothing to do with a forward-facing legacy. It has nothing to do with what people think. I hold myself accountable to reality. Either I am helping people get rid of their limiting belief system, or I'm not.
That's powerful.
There it is. All right. Next up, what is our next segment?
Our next segment, I don't think we actually settled on a title, but wow 'em with the end.
Yeah,
is that how you said
there
it
is. Wow 'em in the end.
Wow 'em in the end.
So here's our second to last, our penultimate segment, and that is wow 'em in the end.
Man, I was not wowed in the end. Actually, no, I was wowed in the end, but instead of like, wow, it was wow. So yes, I was wowed in the end by how poorly executed this film was and how it derailed. And now we know why, because it was 10 films in one. I just didn't understand. When it ended, I was like, this can't be the ending. Even though we're 2 hours and 15 minutes in, they can't end like this. The movie just was hysteria, and the end proved it even more to me.
I'll just say, in the end, in case anyone hasn't seen this yet, in the end, Matt Damon basically learns that the original colony of small people, who now know that the Earth is going to end in 100 years, or there's going to be like a mass extinction, have created a secret vault in the deep trenches of the Earth or whatever.
Like a seed bank.
A seed bank, yeah. Where their small community is going to live and procreate, etc., for the next 1,000 years, basically, until it's going to be safe to come back on Earth. And so Paul's big decision is, does he join them to save the planet, or does he go back, rejoin the now love of his life and other characters and live his life in the now, I guess.
Yeah.
He ends up not joining the colony and instead returning to
and here,
real world.
Clearly there was a lesson to be learned here. He was going to live in the now. He's now in love with this new woman, the Vietnamese woman. And he was going to return to the slums that she lived in the colony back in the United States. And it didn't resonate with me for some reason. I was like, all right, there's a lesson to be learned here. But it didn't resonate with me. And I still don't understand, and maybe one of you guys can explain it to me, the very, very last scene, the very, very last set of frames where he looks at the old man sitting in a chair and watching the television in the slums. And then he hears the horn, and she's waiting for him. It's raining outside, and he runs out. What did that mean? Can someone explain that to me? Wow.
Literally from the moment Matt Damon is playing the drums like he's on ecstasy in a rave, and I could smell the incense burning through the screen, I was so lost. Like, I felt legitimately, the movie at that point starts to break down. The very fabric of the narrative was falling apart so much that I was having a surreal experience. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, there were no stakes for me. By then, everyone seemed fucking crazy and out of their mind. And legitimately, I took a note. When he started playing the drums, he was like so into it. And I realized, this isn't meant to be funny. I was like, how wrong a film can go. How wrong a film can go. And so I was just like, dude, I'm so lost. And I couldn't even, like, you know how part of your brain is trying to predict, like, based on the lesson you're supposed to learn and all that stuff? Like, my brain was trying to predict, like, what is going to be the conflict? I don't even know. Like, is it going to be like him with the woman? But I assumed the two guys that he came with were going 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I never realized that within the structure of the film, it was supposed to make more sense to stay out than to go in. Within the logic of the film, I thought they're all going in. So I thought his thing was going to be like, ooh, I don't know that I want to go in. So when he like doubled down, and they were all like, what are you talking about? Why would you go in? And then they were like, oh, it's going to be hundreds of years. I was like, wait, when did we get that information? It seemed like this shit was happening right now, because the guy was like, there's no time to think. We just have to act right now. No time. Apparently you have 200 years. Like, there's plenty of time to slow down, make sure you're making like a great decision. Like, they made out
an alternative.
like they were all going to fucking die so fast that Matt Damon couldn't get his luggage back out. It's like, no, we're shutting the door.
We're shutting the door. And I was
For
like,
what
does it
reason?
feel tense to me
Like,
right now?
they're not going to die for 200 years. So then it becomes like slapsticky. I was like, what is happening? It was so bizarre that because I thought we must have another 15, 20 minutes to go for them to wrap this up in a meaningful way when they go back and it slums. And when they just cut, I simultaneously was like, thank God it's over. And like, what the fuck was that? So I was literally, and I'm so shocked that she's not hardcore negative because we saw it together. And this is exactly what she said when it finished. Whoa. and I was like, that's exactly what I'm feeling right now. Like, whoa. Like, what the fuck did I just see?
What was that?
It was so weird. It was so weird. And again, like, I want to be effusive, man. Alexander Payne is a talented writer, a talented filmmaker, and I will go see his next thing. Like, he's earned the right. Like, having one miss to me, just not the biggest deal in the world. And yes, this is very much me saying all this because I know we will have misses, and I want people to give us some leeway as well. But like, when you're on the outside and you're not caught up on the internal logic that never makes it to the screen, right? Because they clearly brought the understanding, this is 10 different films. And so it's not jarring for them. And it doesn't feel like the fabric is breaking down because they understand, like, this is 10 films and like each one is like a new moment in somebody's life or whatever. Like, they bring all that, but it's not actually on screen. So I was just like, so beyond lost.
Well, and I think another theme that I thought was interesting in the film that they didn't fully explore, but I think believed that they did, which was this like element of personal responsibility and whether it's a better decision to save the planet by sacrificing your life to go live in this hole until you die, or whether Nock's plan, which is basically, we see when we meet her, her whole life is devoted to helping other people. She changes the world by making these small connections with the community that lives in the slums of Leisureland. She treats them, she brings them food. We see how much she does. She's clearly doing more with her life on Earth than Matt Damon is. And I think what we're supposed to feel at the end is that's what he's choosing. He's seeing that, like, this legacy-based decision, which I think is what he sees as saving the planet. Like, I'm going to be one of the people that sacrificed. They'll remember me in the future as the one who went to live in the hole, and now the humans have survived, or whatever. But in the end, he realizes, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not the real way that I can make an impact on the world. Now, that's another interesting discussion. Like, is this bigger... is there something more to saving the world in a grander sense than like the small personal things you can do to help people? I don't know. That's interesting. And I I felt like the film touched on that, but it just kept getting sidetracked, and I would have
If the film
liked
touched on that, it was this type of touch.
And I do want to say,
you ever seen a cat do that thing where they're like,
yeah, exactly.
that's how they touched on that.
Maybe we should
like
move.
your retelling of the film is good. I just I'll sit for the 2 hours and 10 minutes and just hear you tell me like the themes
Me
and all that
saying
stuff.
this
That'd
is
be
what they intended.
way better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should move to our final. I was going to give some more thoughts, but maybe
you'll save it for where your thumbs at.
Yeah.
All right, our final segment. Where your thumbs at? Where your thumbs at?
Man, okay, so for the film, easily, I give it a thumbs down. Easily. That's not there's no debate. Like we said, tonally it was weird. Finding out it was 10 films in one, essentially, it doesn't make it any better. I'm like, why would anyone try that? It breaks all the rules of filmmaking, and there's nothing cool about it. Like we mentioned before, it started out like a comedy, and a cool comedy, and then it went into this terrible, preachy narrative, and I just don't understand. And then there were sprinkled elements of comedy towards the end, like the original colony kid who was the first kid born on the colony, where they were proud of him because he clearly had sex because he had a friggin' cold sore on his lip. And I'm sorry, herpes aren't funny. Like I was just like, when are herpes funny? When has herpes been funny?
Herpes not funny.
Outside of an 80s film. So I was like, wait, what? So that was ridiculous, and I definitely give the film a thumbs down. I'm surprised Matt Damon did this, but hearing how it happened, it makes sense. For the mindset, I don't want to say a thumbs down, but definitely not a thumbs up. But I'm gonna give it this because although it's 10 films in one, there are some mindset, materials in the film, but it's poorly executed, but it's there, and we kind of talked about it in this conversation, and we pulled it out. So I give it. Wait, whoa, what am I doing? Thumbs down on the movie. There with the mindset.
Neutral.
All right. Despite the fact that you guys did an amazing job of talking about how horrible the film was, I'm going to stick to my guns, which is not that it is good, but I'm going to give it a solid this way because it made me think about a lot of things. I thought it was ambitious and interesting.
For the record, that's your mindset thumb that you've got up right now.
Mine said second.
Exactly. You're doing it backwards? Oh. There you go.
Sorry. Film thumb. Film thumb is this way. So I and there were things I liked about it. I actually really loved, I think her name is Hong Chow, her performance. I thought she was really great. I love the scene where she's telling her story, and it just, I don't know. She just, I think, for me, kind of saved the film because I found her so interesting. And yeah, even you've said you, like in book club, you'll read a book, you'll hate it, then you talk about it, and there's so much to talk about that you kind of come away with appreciation. I guess that's how I feel about the film. So this way. And then I'm going to go the same for mindset. There are a lot of interesting things that the film explored, but never to the fullest extent that they could have. So I like that they were brought up, but they could have done a better job. So C, I guess.
Yes.
All right, so mine is very simple. Thumbs down for the movie for all the reasons that I just spent an inordinate amount of time going over. And then for mindset, I'm going thumbs down as well.
Wow,
so it's a dual thumbs
down.
The reason that I give the mindset the thumbs down is it's not enough to ask the questions. You've got to deal with them intriguingly. Now, this has been one of my most enjoyable panels to record.
Same here.
Because it made me think about a lot of things, but I don't think they did it on purpose. The things I was thinking about were not what they intended me to think about.
Yeah.
So it's a great conversation starter that was trying to be a real movie, and that's the problem. And I think that it failed as a real movie. It was great as a conversation starter, but they didn't add anything to me in terms of what I can take away with my mindset. So yeah, my thumbs at down. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Real Impact. As always, it is amazing to have you join us. And if there's, by the way, any old films that you want us to review, let us know. Drop those in the comments below. We're going to be reviewing old films as well as new films, so let us know what you want to see us review. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.